This is Radical Spatial Futures, a project on spatial resistances, collective speculations and radical imaginations. You're listening to Confronting Radical Imagination, a conversation series asking, what is the role of spatial practice in contexts so deeply conflictual that alternatives are not even considered possible? In this reflective journey, I confront spatial practitioners from around the globe with the notion of radical imagination. What does it mean to them? Is it valuable? Is it an inherent part of design and spatial practice? What is the role of imagination in wider processes of change? The conversations are structured around a series of material agents, images, drawings, and quotes amongst others, which are carefully curated from the practice's past work. In this episode, in conversation with Albert Kreisel, we discuss the work of Oasis Urbano and together unravel stories of spatial practice entangled with stories of family, community, love, care, joy, solidarity, and hope. Oasis Urbano is an intercultural, multidisciplinary collective rooted in the Colombian informal neighbourhood of Moravia, with strong ties across Latin America, Europe, and beyond. They co-produce inclusive strategies for holistic neighbourhood transformations by connecting local communities with academia, civil and cultural organizations, businesses, and public decision makers to exchange knowledge and experiences. In multidisciplinary intercultural urban labs, these diverse stakeholders meet on site to discuss, design, build, and have fun together. These collective experiences build trust and prove the potential of co-production in open outcome design processes with surprising results. By finding common languages, they bridge the gap between bottom-up initiatives and top-down planning and enable the co-creation of a city worth living in for all of its inhabitants. Hope you enjoy. Hi, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good. Where are you? Are you in Colombia or in Berlin?
I'm in Berlin.
Okay.
I'm actually going to Colombia the day after.
Okay. I mean, it's better for the time zone, definitely. Because I'm in the UK right now.
Right, in Sheffield?
Yes, I'm based in Sheffield, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I start sort of with questions and stuff like that, I'd like to tell you just a couple of things about my project and why I'm doing it. So I in that way you see where I'm coming from, and please feel free to ask me any questions. So I want this to kind of be a conversation, if possible, rather than just me interrogating you basically. Okay, so I'm in the UK right now, but I'm originally from Cyprus, which is a small island in the Mediterranean. Probably you might know about it because you're from Germany. We get a lot of German tourists. But in a way, I think growing up in Cyprus and the conflict and the separation of the country, it was a very specific place to grow up in and with very specific conditions. But also studying architecture there, it was kind of the division and how it was manifested in space was something very important for me as around 10 years ago when I was doing my undergrad. And I think my perception of how I understood architecture, but also the kind of conflict and the division in my country, it changed when I got involved first as an intern, but then also as a part of the team in this small collective that is a bicommunal collective of architects from both sides of the island. That basically, I mean, we don't really do buildings or architecture in that sense, but basically just creating spaces to bring people together and exhibitions and encounters in that way. And it changed the way that I understood the conflict of my country in the past, but also the way that I think about the future of my country, but also what I understand architecture to be more generally. So this was sort of the starting point of this project many, many years ago. And now it sort of transformed to be this, have these three main aspects that are the conflict, critical spatial practice, or alternative architectural practice, or however you want to call it, and this theoretical notion of the radical imagination that basically means the ability to collectively say things shouldn't be as they are right now, and we can have futures that are different in a way, and how can we enact this in the present. So it talks a little bit about the present and the futures. So I found a lot of different practices all over the world, so I tried to open up to as many contexts as I can to sort of understand if these feelings that I had when working in this practice, or the things that that are the outcomes for me, the important and the value of the practice, how it changes or how it is relevant in other places and in other practices around the world. So I'm having this sort of conversations with a lot of people from everywhere, and it's quite interesting now. I'm towards the end of that. Okay, so if you have any
This is the initial phase for you to kind of collect a lot of different.
Yeah, so the idea is that in the start, this is small conversations with different people, that I, in a way, confront the practices with this idea of the radical imagination to see if it makes sense in their processes and in their practice and in their context. The second phase, it will be, either in June or in September. I need to decide this now because of the summer in between is not a very good time for people to join. But it will be a sort of small symposium that will be held hybridly. So some people will be in person in Sheffield and some people online. And the idea is that in that case, it's not about me asking you questions individually, but it's about the different practices being together in the same virtual room and discussing with each other. And it's also an opportunity for me to bring back all the things that I found from the conversations, like common themes or any things that I sort of found out, and to bring them back to you and to say, does this make sense? Is this sort of helpful for you or not? Yeah, so that's the second phase. And the third phase, we're not 100% sure if this will be a part of my PhD or it will be the project I do after my PhD, if that makes sense, because of time constraints. But the idea is that I would like to go myself in some of these practices around the world that I'm talking to now virtually, to actually be situated and in the ground and see how this actually, like all these theoretical things that I'm talking about, actually happen in real life. But that's best to do with some more time. So perhaps it will be a project that I will do after the PhD. We'll see. But I'll definitely do that at some point. And I've been watching a lot of your videos and things the last days. And the only thing that I can think about is I want to be there to experience it. And I also know that you have this sort of summer schools and autumn, like spring schools and stuff like that. So it was an idea that at some point in the future years, I might come over to see what you're doing, but we can talk about that later. Okay, so I think the first thing that I'd like to start with is the context of Moravia. And I think the first question that I wanted to ask you is, I know that you first went there around 2013 to work on your thesis, but how did you end up there? How did all of this happen? And why were you so interested in this specific place and you decided to stay there for a long time?
Okay, so I was studying architecture here in Berlin in bachelor studies, but I was also traveling quite a lot, which is also part of schooling. To me, is a very important part to understand, and I believe our discipline as architects, as urbanists, is a lot more than a building, of course. I think we agree on that, and that actually gives us some tools to read that the buildings, the streets, the way cities built tells us a lot about the society, right? So I was very curious about Latin American urban settlements, especially self-built settlements, or favelas, or whatever you want to call them. And I went to do an internship with a foundation called Un Techo para mi país. It's a roof for my country is the word of it. I think it was they started in Chile. It was then Techo para Chile, and then it expanded, and it's now in many Latin American countries. It's a beautiful work because it brings together volunteers from different parts of each city where they operate, and they really bring them to work together closely with local communities in need, and not only on housing. So that there is action weekends where there's the building of emergency housing, but there's also a lot of just being there every weekend and getting to know the communities and finding out together with them what are the priorities. So education programs, formation, or stairs, sanitation, water, whatever, and see, like, work together on it to see how they can advance. So it was a very inspiring work with this foundation, but it still wasn't quite what I was looking for. Because so yeah, Medellin is a super segregated city. There's a lot of wealth and there's a lot of poverty, extreme poverty, and you can see it structurally. You can see very well, which is actually why I chose to go to Medellin to learn about this. One, because it has been very famous for its like pioneer work, social urbanism, the library parks, the metro, the cable cars, and probably you know some of these projects. So and that has really proven how architecture, how urban interventions can really deeply impact the society socially, economically, and change not only the intervened areas but the city as a whole. So I was really inspired by that. That's why I chose to go to Medellin. But then coming there as a German man, I didn't speak Spanish at the time. They were to that area in the south where all the tourists go, where it's kind of a Disney bubble. It doesn't really. Today is the place I least like to go to in Medellin, and I saw that coming quite early. It wasn't really what I was looking for, and then I just met a very friendly man on the airport bus. So it was holidays. I went to the sea for a little bit, and when I came back, I met this guy on the airport bus, and we started talking with the hands and the feet, and a little bit in Italian and Spanish, and then it was after midnight. And when he asked where you're going to stay, the bus was about to drop us. I said, "We'll see. I'm a backpacker, you know." And he's like, "Might be a backpacker, but you're risking your life for no reason. Like, don't be stupid. And you can come with me. I live with two of my brothers, and you can stay for a night or two." And I stayed 5 months.
Okay.
So that's basically the beginning of it, and to me, it says a lot about the people. You know, yeah, just very, very warm, very welcoming, very open, and like people who don't have a lot but who love to share that. So I was very lucky to just arrive to Moravia overnight, and then the day after I walked the streets, and this is exactly what I was looking for.
Why? It seems like you were interested in, like in a way, segregated cities or in cities that had really high inequality levels, and how architecture was useful, or urbanism. Why was that? Was there like a specific reason, like from your past, or like how did you get interested in this idea of inequality?
I'm not so sure. I felt we weren't being taught enough about it.
Okay.
Both at school, high school, and then university. We have sometimes quite a narrow vision on what we've been trained for. And it's a beautiful discipline, and it's so vast, and there's architecture, so many things. But I was quite frustrated to see that we're being taught to design another museum and another luxury facility, and you know, understand architecture as a kind of a luxurious discipline for the few, and few people thinking about a decent roof for the most. So again, traveling, I saw a lot of that. Obviously, here in Berlin, my life has been very privileged and very easy, especially in the time that I was raised. You know, Education of Germany, it's easy to have that vision coming from an easy point, I guess. But yeah, I just figured we need to look a lot more on that side of the city. And I also understood, I mean, if you look at a favela, I always find it hard to find the right word for that.
Yeah,
at least self-built neighborhood is what I like the most, because informal doesn't make so much sense. It has some charm to it, right? It somehow attracts the eye. You wonder what there is. There's so much diversity in life, and you want to know. Then by living there and living with the people, I actually saw that there are so much qualities that nobody can teach us at universities. So it made it so obvious that we need to come together and learn from each other, you know?
Yeah. I think in when I was studying, and I guess that I'm a bit younger than you, I think whenever like informal settlements or self-built areas were kind of discussed in my undergrad in architecture, they were a little bit romanticized in a way, if that makes sense. So it was about what are these qualities and how do we extract them, or how can we use them somewhere else, or how can architecture help these people. And I think I think you're right that in a way, by living there, you understand both the things that are good and the really important qualities, but also like the problems that exist in the space. That this is very removed, like books, you don't really get that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Obviously, it's dangerous to romanticize that tendency. That's one risk. Another risk, obviously, again, coming in as a white man from Germany, you know, I don't, and no one on our team ever had intentions to come in as a neo-colonialist with an approach like we know how to do things, and we never did. We tried to be very critical and question our work, but also we never got in and said this is how we're going to do it. We all got in and said let's sit down together and discuss and see and find out what happens.
How
so I learned. Sorry, I feel I learn so much when I'm there. And I don't come in as a teacher, you know. We all come in learning together.
Yeah, of course. How did people react to you being there and staying there for so long, as as you said, the white German outsider dude that just comes and stays here? Like I'm sure people were curious in the start, but did they approach you as someone that is coming from outside? Like, was there like a hesitance, or was it more just come into my house?
So the people there are incredibly warm and super curious. So they definitely approached me a lot. It has changed a lot. When I got there in 2013, I was the only madman, tall white man coming in there, you know. And people were telling me, you're going to get killed, you're going to get kidnapped, you cannot go. Taxi drivers would refuse to bring me there. And even people in the neighborhood said, you have to leave, you cannot stay here, you're not safe. But then many other people said, of course you can stay, this is the best place. And I felt I was safe, I felt it was good. So people were super friendly, super open with me, very curious. I didn't understand them much in the beginning, so I had to learn their language first. But I felt really well. And then with time, it has changed. Nowadays, there's actually plenty of tourists going there. And again, it's a critical point for us because we contribute to the tourism. And it's a knife with two sides. I don't know, a coin with two sides. Sustainable local tourism can be a very dangerous thing. And there are famous examples in Medellin that are celebrated examples, but they're actually really bad, really harmful for the local place. So we have to be careful. But I've seen, like, through the summer schools and other people we've brought in, there have been, 50, 60 or more people from outside that we brought to the territory, and they've all felt safe. And it's always about meeting on eye level, just being respectful mutually. And then I don't think there's.
That's really interesting because it's something that I actually also noticed, because when I first Googled, like I'm always interested what is the first thing that comes out in Google when I Google the name of a place, right? And when I Googled Moravia, and I had to say that it's in Colombia, not the other Moravia that is in Europe, it was like all pages of tours, which was very interesting. So I actually have some screenshots. So it was like all of this basically. It was like it was tours all about this difference, the transformation basically narrative that from this idea of the garbage dump to whatever it is right now. And I was wondering if, I guess in some ways this is good for the neighborhood, but it might also be not very good when you have this influx of tourists coming. Like, it's like a touristification of, like, I don't know, the informal settlement and the colors and like the streets, which happens in a lot of places in the world. And yeah, it was really interesting. But a bit...
It's striking. That just...
I have some more images. So I'm going to throw to you how I understand the narratives of the place to see if I'm actually right from outside, like from someone from outside.
I'm sorry, if I can just add to that point of tourism. I believe there is a big potential. You just have to be super, super careful that it really remains with the people from there. And, the benefits stay with the people. Because often in Medellin, there's just an agency who has a clever business model and then brings a lot of people through the neighborhoods, and they take pictures of the people who live there, like in the zoo, and nothing stays. So it becomes really a very bad thing for the local community. I see that danger. Actually, it's difficult. Yet, if you look at that screenshot, the upper one on the left, Moravia Tours, that's actually... that it's run by Cielo and Angela, who are our deep close friends, and Cielo is the director of our foundation. So, and for them, it's obviously a good opportunity. And then again, this project also began because I somehow ended up there. So it's not always bad, It's
yeah. I'm not saying it's bad, but there is this double edge knife, as you called it. And I noticed that this was in one of your videos. This was one of the first tours that were started in the area. And then I think all of the other ones are much, much more recent, newer. So it shows that there is this shift, that this is becoming interesting internationally somehow, and people want to come and visit.
And that's also a sign that the neighborhood is changing its, it had a super bad reputation so Medellin already has globally this reputation of narco and, cocaine and prostitution and stuff, which is related to problems that really, really exist. But it's obviously also an outside view that creates a super bad stigma for the people. And Moravia had a super bad stigma in Medellin for the people who live in trash. It's dangerous, it's dirty, it's all bad, and nobody could go. So to see that nowadays people are going there and like to talk about the transformation, that's a very positive sign. We just need to be really careful the way we tell the story and who's being involved in it.
I think that's sort of what I noticed as well when looking into the narratives or how people see it. So it's this narrative that it went from the garbage dump to first this place that people started inhabiting and building on and creating community and using the waste to but then it still had this very bad reputation. And I think the other thing that comes up a lot when you search about Moravia is this transformation of the waste, the morro of the waste to the morro of the green area. And I think what was really interesting to me was this kind of double thing from all the videos when I saw that people love this place a lot. And it has all these qualities, but it still has all the conflict within it. It's normal. It's like almost every place in the world. Yeah. So I don't know. I just put this as a way to show what I found out and just ask you, is this how it is right now? Is it the case? Has something changed? You living there for almost 10 years, has your opinion about the place changed?
I wouldn't say my opinion has changed, but obviously it's a very alive territory, very diverse territory, so it's in constant change. When you're looking at the garbage dump and that transformation projects that were very famous, that were used very much by the administration to make publicity. That has changed a lot. And now I could talk a lot about the history, the genesis, how it came to happen, and then how the whole process of forced eviction, which was really painful and politically very difficult. So to to bring 15,000 people almost who lived on the garbage dump before then to the periphery of the city. That was a very troublesome process, where you can also not say it was good or bad, but it was very, very difficult. And then they did those gardens in a complex constellation. So there was a university involved doing great research, because it's also interesting, all the garbage, what happens to it, how is it actually possible that people live there? They used to just put a hole in the ground and then light the gas so they could cook, and they were growing vegetables there and having chicken. And so it's an incredible, it's very rich in different, in diversity, because it's also people, it's almost everybody who's there, they are displaced people. There's more than 8 million internally displaced people. So these are the places in the city where all these people come, and they come with empty hands and rural traditions to an extremely urban context, which is interesting. Then they did these gardens and sold it as a beautiful project, but they basically put some concrete, like a thin layer of concrete on top of all the garbage, and put some flowers on top of it, saying it had transformed. It's complex. And then within not even 2 years, the mafia sold almost
plots,
all of,
right?
all of it. So it's right now, it's, I would say 70 to 80% of it is populated again. Now you don't see these gardens anymore.
No.
Before they were there, but they were only to the side where the metro goes. So the metro is where the tourist takes the picture, and the metro is the beautiful Medellin they like to sell. And on the other side, that's facing the territory, they didn't do the gardens. So it's always it's a bit difficult. Medellin has done incredible work in the beginning of the millennium. But a problem of urban planning is always that it's not long term, when it can only last 4 years of an administration. And it's so hard to make urban planning in just 4 years, and then the next one comes and changes ideas, and so that's really, really tough.
But it also sounds like it's like there is two transformations. There is a transformation, let's say, from the garbage dump to the vibrant community of people living there, with all of their rural and from wherever they came, their migration backgrounds. And then there is this transformation that, like, I don't know, the city or all the newspapers are trying to sell you, that is from the garbage dump to the green space. And these are two completely different things. And I noticed that because all these articles that were talking about this green space, especially the ones in English that there was, like in the CNN and the BBC and like this and that, they never talked at all about the neighborhood, let's say. So it was like a complete like division there. But also, it doesn't seem like the community had any ownership of this new green space. It seems like something that was just behind them and was very removed, at least to me, from looking at the pictures.
There was a greenhouse on top of it, and the greenhouse was run by a community, like a local community gardener initiative. So there are several gardening processes in the neighborhood, really good work. But it was never really sustainable, and they were only cultivating flowers. Thousands of flowers they could never sell. It didn't really become sustainable in itself, so that it could convert into like a business model that would actually really benefit the participating people from the community permanently or more sustainably. So that was a little bit of a problem, and then obviously the project was just abandoned when the problems came in with the new, like, with selling plots and people coming, building again. So it was tricky, but I completely understand what you say. It's that they like to talk about the transformation of leaving out the people who are, who make most of it. Again, it's obviously not black and white, but there has traditionally been a lot of political conflict around the area, because in the beginning the state wasn't interested in it. Medellin has grown 8 times by the factor 8 its population in less than 50 years. So it's just like, it's incredible. So Moravia used to be in the periphery and nobody was interested in that. That's why they let people do that, live there, whatever. Let the poor live in the garbage if they want to. Then the city grew and expanded and it became much more interesting. Nowadays, the city is so big and that area has become super interesting economically. It was initially illegally occupied. They have been trying to find excuses to kick the people out, to make business deals, with construction companies and build towers. So they say you cannot live here; it's too dangerous. But they want to build 18-story towers there for people to live, so they can sell them. It's difficult. And then and then there has been administrations who came in and actually did great projects with the community, but again, the administration changed and they abandoned the project. As for the property rights, so I don't remember well when that was, but there was one administration that had a really nice idea and project to offer legal property rights. This is where the families had been living. They had built their house, they built their streets and schools themselves to receive a legal property right and be able to stay there in return for community work. But when the administration changed, the project was abandoned and it left only 10% of plots being legalized. So now, and luckily they're not all in one place. But they're all around the neighborhood, which makes the eviction much more difficult. But
I was gonna ask you, is it like a road of people that have papers and then everyone else doesn't? Thank God it's like because I imagine then it would create like a new division, right? These are the properties that are legal, and then the rest of the neighborhood is not. So I guess like kind of the next, not chapter, but the follow-up is like, because like how do you and your practice or like your role as an architect, how do you sort of fit in this whole context and the type of work that you do? How do you see it respond to this context or these conditions that we were discussing?
I think as I already said in the beginning, we came in and learned a lot from the people about their history, about the way they've built it, about how they see the conflict, why they want to stay, what qualities they see, what they are afraid of. So initially we started the project thinking about social housing with the idea that actually if we bring planners here, if we bring public and private decision makers here, if we bring becoming architects here, and we partner them with the people who actually live in these homes and have built them, then we can learn a lot better how socially housing should look like. And we need to take that into account if we want to, if we decide these 15,000 people, they now go to towers at the other side of the city, ciao. And the towers, they are designed on numbers, nothing else. There's no other dimension to it than just an economical one, and obviously structural basic need, which needs to be there, both need to be there. But it could work a lot better if we took that into account. So that's how we started. We started with the summer schools, and we started again not saying this is what we should do, but asking. Asking and exchanging points of view, because we all come from another place, we all have different experiences, and when we sit down together and we discuss, it's going to be exhausting, but at the end we'll get some fruits, we'll get some answers that actually represent many of us, and then it was always a process with open outcome. So we did get to designs for social housing for several plots around that area, because we also said if you really want to force these people to move out, well, you got to build them homes right next door and not on the other side of the city. So we initially did that, but then we did that in cooperation with universities, both from there and here. First, that's why we called it spring school, because Medellin is the city of eternal spring, they say,
Okay.
so that's why we called the first summer school spring school. Principle is obviously the general principle of a workshop that goes for a few weeks, and that is a combination of a multidisciplinary workshop that brings different people together and a cultural festival, because we didn't only say, okay, we have 10 community leaders, they were part of the workshop, so now we represent the community. We did concerts and we did cookings and we did street theater and sports events and such, and we went to the elementary school and just to make sure that we would reach out to different layers of the community and that everybody was going to have fun out of it. And then an important piece was obviously to change something, to not only stay there talking, because there are many people going, talking, making interviews, taking pictures, and then we come back. And when we did leave a mark with the first intervention, there was the staircase, the escaleras, people began to understand this was different. Like, there was a real commitment to this place, a long-term commitment, and a commitment to do something. And that was a beautiful exercise, because we realized with collective effort, everything is possible. Everybody brings to the table what they have. And we reached out to businesses to donate concrete and color, and infrastructure department of the administration, and they donate soil and plants, and more and more volunteers came just to help. And the people, the actual school children were the ones who did the stairs, which was super beautiful. And you got the cadena humana, the human chain, which is such a beautiful image, like, bucket by bucket, because the staircase was so narrow, you could never go in with a car. And then everybody was just bucket by bucket, the community mothers, the children, and everybody. It was a beautiful moment to create trust and to see not, these are not the poor ones, and these are the corrupt ones, and these are the rich ones. No, that's not how it works. And the same year we did a summer school in Berlin, because it was important to have that two sides in exchange. And we brought in both university students, but especially community leaders from Moravia. And the youngest was 16 at the time, and the oldest was 56, I think. Most of them had never been on a plane before. And now they were here for 3 weeks. And it was beautiful, beautiful. And it was also not only like on a personal level a beautiful experience, but it was also good to see that we can actually learn if we ask the same questions in a completely different territory. And ever since, many new priorities and ideas and new focal themes of the project have come up. And actually what our dream is now to build the new community foundation, the 4-story building that initially started when they were here. The idea to build something like that, it started when we were here. And then we see like nutrition becomes a point that is a lot more important. So we built a mobile kitchen, and so we built a space for it. So our role is not to come in and say we are architects and we'll tell you what to do.
Yeah, and we want to build a community center or whatever. No, but it's more about like what is happening. What do you need? Yeah. How can we help each other?
And how can we accept the no? Like, we've come in with a project once that we loved. We loved it so much. We thought this is incredible. This is going to be so great. And we went in and had a summer school of 2 weeks, and we got out and we're like, okay, we're not doing. They don't want it.
What was it?
It's Eco Parque.
Okay.
Maybe you've seen it. So
yes, I seen it, but I did not understand that this was like I saw it come up somewhere, and then I was like, okay, this didn't happen, but I didn't understand that it didn't happen because it was not perceived.
It's still there. The idea is still there somehow, but it was also due to political things. It was a bit tricky. So there were 2 fires, and that's why the slope is not yet occupied again.
Okay.
And we wanted to do these vertical gardens with quite a sweet project. But we said if we and the administration liked it, but we said if we do it, we need to build like the center on top, and that's a plot where we wanted to build a house with a roof, and it's illegal, so they couldn't allow us to do it. And so they weren't so convinced, but then the community was like, we don't want to learn about plants here, we want to play soccer. Go away with that.
Who told you that the 1 free hour that I have a day, I want to plant tomatoes? Maybe I want to play soccer.
Exactly.
I think this is an interesting conversation because it has a lot to do with also the ego of the architect. I think studying, you kind of study and you learn, and everyone ingrains to you this idea that you are the expert and you know what should happen. Even if you're designing a house for like someone, and you are the one that knows, and you need to convince them that they don't know how to live their everyday life. And then you completely need to like leave that behind. And actually, I think it's a lot, what you're saying is a lot about recognizing that the other people are the experts and just saying, okay, they know what they're doing. They know how they live. Yeah. I am not a hero to intervene in that. I'm just gonna support it in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, bring together different types of knowledge. Contribute together. It's not, of course, we bring in some kinds of expertise that they don't have, as they bring a lot of expertise that we don't have, and together that can lead to something really nice. And I mean, obviously, there are needs to educate on certain things. I'm talking about environmental issues, and that begins with education. So, even though it wasn't initially the main focus, but our foundation more and more becomes a school, becomes a place of alternative education. And that begins with the popular knowledge, the knowledge, the empiric knowledge, the knowledge that the families hold, that they bring, that they like. It's about fun.
Yeah. So I think fun is always very important. Like, I think sometimes we forget that, but I think fun is like I think this is the main difference, because trying to figure out this project and how I would like define it and how I would, what type of questions I would ask. I went to the politics department of the university and took this module just like to get to know more things, because in a way there is like a lot of overlap, and they were talking about different types of democratic innovations and participation in like politics, in like political processes. And they would constantly talk about how difficult it is to bring people together to discuss issues. And as an architect that sees a lot of this type of projects, and like all my research and my work has to do with like practice in general, like this alternative practice, I was like, it's just because it's not fun. You shouldn't just create a space where you invite people to come talk for 2 hours and take decisions and vote and then leave. You should create a space where people do other things that they want to do. And then when we need to take a decision, the community, the family of the space or whatever, it already exists there. And then we can discuss about the difficult things, right?
Absolutely. Or they naturally come up, but as it like naturally come up. Yeah, I completely agree.
So I think it's a very different approach to how you see this sort of work from our discipline to others.
Yeah, and again, we learn so much when we go to these territories. Because at school we're being taught we have to sit down in a quiet place and look very sincere, very very clever, and be very silent and only say clever things.
And wear black clothes.
Only wear black for sure. Yes. Yeah, I mean, we've had classes. I remember when we did the stairs, and we had quite renowned it's not to discredit anyone, but we had some quite renowned professors there, and it was about discussing about how we should paint these walls, and they were like, "Oh, let's do this one gray," and I saw that in a magazine that looked terrific, and have a look around. Like, do you see anyone wearing gray? This is the most colorful place you can imagine. He's like, well, like they can paint it later. It's like, what? Like you teach about participatory design. Did you just say that? This it doesn't need to look good for us to be pretty in a magazine. Obviously, as architects, we have everybody has taste, and hopefully design leads also to visually, exciting results. But the most important part is that the people who live there enjoy it, and they can appropriate the space
and take ownership of it. Like, after all, it's not your square or your taller is of the people, and they should feel like it's open and they can do what they want to do there, right?
So as we design the house, that's like super interesting. Always getting in and then taking 2 steps back and say how can we have a structure that is organized enough to make sure it doesn't just end up being a complete mess because it's a super chaotic place, but that it can every day can be filled with ideas and structured by the people who use it.
I wanted to ask you, I noticed that you had the first Taller Tropical, like the bamboo place that you built up, and then sort of the lease ran out, if I understand correctly, and you had to disassemble it, and now you're moving towards, and you have the crowdfunding campaign for the bigger building. I just wanted to ask about this moment that the lease ran out. Was this something you were expecting, or was there any... Like, was it always seen as like an opportunity that, okay, we'll take this down and we'll do something better? Or did it come without you expecting it? And then there was issues. Like, I thought that it's like an interesting moment, because I find that in many projects that you start doing something sort of temporary, like to work, and then suddenly someone comes and tells you need to leave now. And that's always like a pivotal moment for the community.
Well observed, and yeah, good questions. We hoped that we could keep on convincing them to stay longer, but at some point they decided to not want. I mean, the building was owned by a family. Actually, it was a super spontaneous deal that we could rent it out. So that was already a pivotal point, because we were supposed to build on the former garbage dump next to the greenhouse. That was the initial idea. Then we were denied building permission at very last second. It was like a super bad moment for us, we thought. We had to improvise. We found that space, which turned out to be a much greater opportunity.
It's also in the...
Yeah.
Inside the community, right? On the edge of it, right?
Exactly, because exactly like you said, the project on the garbage dump, it was nice. I mean, you could breathe some air. It was, if you needed to get away from the density, from the noise, because it's super intense neighborhood. Nice, but nobody was there. Nobody was up there. There was no shading. There was no quality for the people to stay there. So the project, to have it in the middle of the street, was much nicer in the end. Which is a good learning, the points that seem to be devastating at some point, because you were so convinced of this direction that it needs to go that path, and they say, no, door is closed, your problem. You're sometimes being forced into finding something that can actually be much better. And same happened when they told us they weren't going to give us a longer contract. So we got like another 6 months, and then they said that's it. And it was super bad for us, because it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And since the Taller Tropical was open, it was the only space where people actually gathered. Everything was happening there. Because the schools were closed, the community center was closed. They had a really, really harsh lockdown in Medellin, and nobody could go anywhere. So the Taller became a super important place. And then we had to dismantle it, not knowing where we go, when, what was going to happen with all the processes that were in place. So it was super sad for us. It was really worrying, but again, it forced us to legalize as a foundation, because before that we had been as informal as everything around us. It was just a project of some friends, and somehow sustained it for some years. But then we're like, okay, if we want to continue, we need to finally constitute a legal foundation here in Colombia. And then next time, we're not going to rent a space, we're going to buy a space. We have to figure out a way to buy a space. For that, we need foundation. And now we're legally constituted a bit more than 2 years, 2.5 years maybe. And that opens up a whole new range of opportunities especially for the
funding, also for funding, right?
For funding, for contracts, for many things. It comes with responsibilities and financial pressure somehow. It comes with a lot more work. But it is like the jump from a grassroots initiative that at some point kind of needs to happen. in order to be able to upscale it a little bit. And I don't love the word upscale, impact and stuff, because it's a super capitalist approach on work that can already be doing great, transform lives. But if that works really well and you manage a way to open that possibility for even more people, it's great. And the foundation allows us to do so.
So how are you doing now with the process of the new taller? Because I know that you had the crowdfunding campaign, but that was already some years back, right? Are you like moving on? Is it like is it happening or?
Yeah. So things always take more time than you expect.
Yeah, of course.
That's already natural. The good and important learning is that's good. It's good that things take more time, because again, we as architects, we had an idea. We wanted to come in and do this fabulous. Like we would have loved to build 2 years ago. Now we're super happy we did it, because what is happening in the meantime is that the whole, what's going to be the flesh, the life, the content, the activities, the relationships, the contents, the programmatic ideas, all of this is growing, and it's growing naturally. We're lucky enough to have this house right in front of the canal, and across the canal, and there's a bridge right in front of the house. Across the canal, there's a park. So to start with, we transformed the park. It was super abandoned. It was ugly. It was dark. It was really not a place people wanted to spend time. And there's almost no public space in Moravia. It's the most densely populated neighbourhood in the country. There's no space with quality, and that's a space where there's no cars coming through. There's trees. So we did that, and by doing that, we got to know all the neighbors, because it's many neighborhoods within one. It's a small area with almost 50,000 people, but still, it's like you walk 3 blocks down, and it's a different dynamic. It's different neighbors. It's all different. So it was super important for us to really get to know everybody, and the people are taking care of the garden. The people are coming with proposals, with ideas, and the house is now only one. It's very little, and it's only one floor, but there's so many programs going on, and every year more. The park is our classroom whenever the weather allows. So as we keep on, and we're slowly designing, because we are a small team with still very limited resources. So we have, it's not like we can sit back and think of the house all day. So we're slow, but we have come to learn it's actually completely all right. There's no hurry. We bought this house. We're super excited about designing the building. We're super excited of how it's going to be one day. But the most important part is that it happens naturally, and that the people, use it the way they want. So it's still happening. Of course, we always need to find more funding.
Yes.
That's a part. It was a part of designing it, because it's not like building the house and then saying, okay, now you stand on your own feet. No, I mean, obviously a bigger house has more costs, has more programs to it. We need to understand how can the foundation be independent of donations. Like how can we find, because the Taller Tropical was all free of charge activities. Nothing commercial could happen there, and now it's going to be. We need to find a good balance between activities that generate an income for the project and that generate an income for the people from the community who work in the project, and activities that are free for the entire community.
Did the Architecture and Development Award that you got that year, did it help all of this process in a way?
Yeah,
in any way, it gave you some attention, or?
Yeah. Already the fact that we are sitting here together, that's happened out of collaboration with Architecture and Development. I really think it helped us, and it's inspiring. We got to know other processes. We got to know nice people. We had some financial help also, some new connections. I think it's a lot about networking. It's a lot about exchanging what we do with others, learning from others, and making contacts. So I'm happy. I'm really happy about this opportunity.
Okay, I'll bring up my screen again. So this I wanted to ask about this. Now it makes sense for two reasons, because when I was looking at your website and everything and your Instagram, it sort of felt, because the taller number 2 takes some time, of course, as you said, it's a slow process, and then you don't have that much physical space to do the workshops and things like that. It felt like this project was an opportunity to open up. I feel like it's quite a different approach or project than the rest of the things that you did, because suddenly it's not about only Moravia and the very specific sector that you're located in, the people there, but it's about finding all these other people that are doing similar things in the territory and sort of bring them together and have these conversations that are very important.
You did a lot of research. Thank you for being so.
No, because I think, like, before we go back to what I said, I think for me it's important because I can find a lot of things out for your practice just by looking at your websites and your Instagram and all the communications and your booklets and the things that you published, whatever. So I want this to be an opportunity for me to talk with you and find out the things that I will not find out in your website. Yes. So if I come here without knowing what you're doing, then we will just spend 1.5 hours of you explaining to me what you're doing rather than have a conversation that is more meaningful in a way. But yeah, I felt like this project, it is a form of networking, but also it's something that in the practice that I'm involved in, we always say that we feel like sometimes when you're doing this sort of work, you feel like you're alone and no one else is doing that. And it's like, it's just you and you are in the struggle. But then suddenly you find that a lot of people around you are doing similar work, and it's about connecting with them.
Sure. So the process, Voces de los Territorios, we did not start it because the other project wasn't going well. The project is going super well. Like we're completely fine with that. I understand that from the outside. It's interesting to me, and thank you for saying it, because from the inside, we never looked at it that way. This project, Voices of the Territories, came up because of what you just mentioned. Sometimes you feel really alone running a grassroots organization. Sometimes the community feels really left alone and in struggle. The house that our foundation now is not only of Fundación Oasis Urbano, but it's the house of Corporación Mangle, of Low Carbon City, of Trisi Lab, to name only a few. And we are the 4 who initiated this process together. It's a home to these processes and to our allies. And we realized that what I mentioned before, that to get over the hump from a grassroots organization to somehow find some stability and to be able to learn, to know, like, we can not look like we have 6 months more funding, or we have been working 6 months for free already. Like, how much longer can we do that, you know?
So we also need to eat and pay electricity and everything.
One thing is the economic problem, and I mean there's a lot of bureaucracy for foundations, for community processes. It's super expensive. They all need to. It's crazy the amount of bureaucratic things that we have to do to run the foundation. So who teaches us that? Who helps us with that? You know, how can we share some resources? How can we, hey, can you tell me how you did that? Can you? So one thing is networking, learning together. One thing is sharing resources and complementing what we can do. Another thing is Medellin has incredible work all across the city, and the city is super diverse. So we have the urban territory, and then we have the rural territory, which still is part of Medellin, and then we have other cities that are attached to Medellin and like the metropolitan area. There is incredible work on so many important issues, you know, and that they don't necessarily have to anything to do with architecture. There are processes obviously related to gender, to racism, to other forms of discrimination. There are processes working with population that lives on the street, with drug addiction, with armed conflict and refugees. There are lots and lots and lots of great cultural and educational processes. A lot that goes through music, artistic expression, theater. There's an incredible and seemingly endless range of beautiful and important work, purposeful work, that has no recognition, that has no visibility, that has no resources to be able to continue to work. There are so many great processes who have to stop working because they lack visibility, funds, and all that. Collaboration. And in order to survive and keep going, they work like that, With this process, we said, let's meet up and discuss. We cannot do that every day, but we can do it every now and then we can share. We can be vulnerable about what we struggle with. We can talk why we do what we do. Because the organizations, they are run by leaders who do that with very personal motivations also. And then we can see, like, you got some funding from here. Tell me a little bit about it, or maybe present me that business, or we can talk about how we can, instead of saying we're fed up with politics here in the city and it's completely hopeless, which is how everybody feels. Politics in Medellin, a complete disaster, and we can say it's a disaster and stay like that. Or we can sit down and discuss all day, all night, and then we can write down what we want. And then we can knock the door and say, Mr. Mrs. and Mr. Decision Maker, we disagree. But we don't have to disagree and saying this is bad. We come proposing. And we come saying, look, there is this and that. You don't have to invent the wheel new every time. There is so many great things happening. Be open for it. Help. There are lots of foundations who have so much money they don't know where to put it, and they keep on putting it into the same processes that don't really help. It's like existentialism. I don't know if that word exists in English. So instead of really inverting in people's capacities, and talents, in ideas. So that's really the motivation for this process, which has its third encounter in a week or two.
Exciting, yes. I'm so jealous, but this happens to me all the time, because now, I talk with all these cool people everywhere in the world, and I want to be in 20 different places at the same time. And it makes me a bit sad that this PhD has become this very online thing, but I think it also gives me an opportunity to talk with people that if we didn't have this way of discussing it, wouldn't be able for us to meet, and for me to meet a lot of different people from very different places, right? But what you were saying...
I also envy you for having all these conversations. It looks like a lot of work what you do. Lot of work, but you must be super nice
The reason that I asked if I can post this conversations that we're having is because I talk with a lot of really cool people like you, and I understand that it's like a resource or an archive. These conversations on its own is a sort of output that I can also give back to you, if that makes sense. So you can, like when we have our symposium, you can, if you see someone that you join, let's say you have time and join, and you find someone's work interesting, you can always go back and listen to my conversation with them as you would listen to a podcast. So that's sort of the idea of it. But yeah, it's been a nice experience, and I think I will continue doing this for many years, even if it's not for the PhD, because I think it's a very important thing to do, to hear about all these stories and to try to think about, as you were saying with Voces de los Territorios, how can we, like even in Medellin, you have all these people that do this amazing work, and you can find a way to support and help each other. But also, if you think about it in an international level, there is a lot of people all around the world that do work that maybe doesn't look the same or it doesn't feel the same, but the values are the same, the motivations are the same, and there is perhaps resources that we can help or share, but also maybe ways of speaking or conversations that we can have. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do with this project. What I was going to say is that the way that you were talking about about it. It's why I think this concept of radical imagination is very important, because basically it means it's a term that is used a lot in social movement research. And they are saying that people go out and they protest, but many times the social movements don't have the capacity to think, how does this future that you want, that you're striving for, how does it actually look like? Or what do you want from the future? And a lot of people don't have the capacity, activists don't always have the capacity to think about this in a collective way. And I think when I came across this term, everything started making sense, because sort of what my hypothesis is that all of these spatial practices, they do that without even thinking about it. But what these spaces, like the ones that you create, what they do is that they bring people together. And it's not just about doing something now, but it's also thinking about how do we want our spaces and our communities to be in the future? Like, what do we want? And doing that collectively, and also then finding ways to change the present, like little by little. And I found that very interesting in your work. But the way that I see value in your practice, I think, and this thing, you mentioned it yourself, impact is a very weird word that now in academia, but also every time you get any sort of funding or you want to participate to anything, they ask, what is your impact? And I think for many practices is a really difficult thing to define, because what you think that the impact is and what these people regard impact is a very different thing. So I think this is an important part that I'd like to talk about. But in a way, obviously, in your case, there is a very spatial and physical value of there is stairs that are better than they were before. But it's also about finding spaces and creating spaces where people come together and they do things together and they talk and they think about the future. And I had a screenshot of this that you already mentioned, and it's from one of the Voces de los Territorios booklets that you made in the end. And it's like a statement of, this is not what we talked about, this is what we want. And I find that a very powerful thing to be able to do collectively. This is not what I want and not what you want, but this is what we want as a community, let's say, of people. I don't even know what I have anywhere here. Yeah, and I remember I found that this is a very similar approach to what you have done many years ago in the manifesto. Because in a way it was a collection of things. This is what is happening. This is what we want. These are our claims. And these are the scenarios and how we think about the future of things and how they might happen. So it was interesting for me to realize that even these two documents that have so many years between them, they still have a very similar value behind them, or the way that you think about things is, there is this very clear line of your motivation and your approach.
And we keep on learning. Like, there's one thing that hurts, that us everything. It hurts to come back at it now, but one thing is just language. Because in the Spanish version of it, we go, we say you have to do this and you have to do that. When what we want to say is we should, let's
do this. Yes.
And we really messed it up just by translating from English to Spanish, and when we printed it, we were like, this is just to give you an example, like that. The language is important, you know. What we do is a lot of translation, and that's not talking so much English to Spanish, but talking community mother to politician, talking the vision and dreams of a pupil, of a school child to or to an activist or whatever. I think it's a lot about translation. It's important to find common languages, and they are constantly renewing. So to express together what we want is important. Actually, now going back to the book is super interesting for us, and it's quite. I mean, there are obviously some things that we might want to change today, but it's quite. It feels good to look at it, especially at the claims and tools, and then look at our project today and be like, ooh, like if we manage to build it the way we think, then we actually, you know, the book more city scale or neighborhood scale, but if we convert that into a building and a public space, then we're on a good path.
It's sort of like an artifact from the past, right? It's like when you are an archaeologist and you find something from the past. I think it's interesting because it's a part of your past. And you can definitely see the difference. Like when I was looking at, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but my first reaction was, this is like a lot of like toolkits or things like that architects, especially in the start of their careers after university, that's the sort of output that you get many times. These are our tools that we have. These are the scenarios. It's like a very common way of presenting things. And now your newer documents, they are more about, not about you. They don't even look like an architect made them many times. It's about the voice of the people and the community and the things that we are doing, like the actions. So there is this shift that is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's also quite an academic work, and yeah, you see I mean, it's also like we make fun of ourselves for publishing our first book and call it a manifesto. It's quite you take quite a mouthful, but it's also it represented this is the way that Moravia has always been talking, and they are like we came in so. We were so motivated by this threats of forced eviction. We were so scared that the people would lose their territory. Now we're much more relaxed because time has told us nobody's getting them out. So
they're not moving. Yeah.
Nobody's. They know how to defend themselves. And the way we can contribute is through proposal. Rather than protesting with like in a violent way, we come to propose. We say we disagree, but look, like we have an alternative. We have ideas. You got to come here and fight. Come here. We invite everybody to come to a territory. People didn't want to come; they were scared. Now they come and they sit down and they're like, "Ooh, it's actually quite nice here." The people actually have ideas. So yeah, we're learning. We're learning. But also important to say, like Voces de los Territorios, we are part of the team who initiated the process. But it's not our process. This is not Fundación Oasis Urbano. This is a practice. It's another thing that we love, and we're part of it. And we're actually trying to find some funding to see if we can have some members of the team dedicated only to this, because the process is growing and it needs more attention. And we are also we're discussing a lot of what this could be. It's super new and there's so many people involved, so we still haven't figured out what it's going to be. But yeah, it's important to say it's not ours. None of this.
Yeah. But I think in a way you'd say that about many of your projects. Like it's not your building, it's the building of all these other people that are working with. It's the home of many allies, right? Like, I wonder, what do you think is like the main value of the work that you're doing? Like, it's maybe a double question. Like, the one question is, how do you present it to, I don't know, funders or architecture and development or whomever that you try to get support from? And the other thing is, what do you personally, as Albert, think that is the most valuable thing about what you're doing?
Frankly, how we tell the story depends on who we tell the story to. That doesn't mean we're not being truthful, but it means that there are so many different routes, methods, desires, qualities in what we do. And also, like, we do work with environment, we do work with women empowerment, we do work with children, we do work with elderly, we do work with mobility. So we can really frame it. Actually, often difficult for us because we cannot frame it, just cannot go to that direction because it's so many things. But that's why it quite depends on who we're talking to.
I mean, it's translation, like you said before. It's another form of translating, right?
Yeah, exactly. What is the value for me? when I ask myself that question, I like people pop up in my head. People that I have, people that I love, but whose lives I have seen change over the past 10 years, change a lot. And then again, we talk about empowerment, and it's a word that seems to come from an application for funding, but we know what empowerment means. We've seen it. We've seen people evolve in an incredible way. We've seen people stepping up and growing and being brave and taking opportunities and learning and inspiring others. We've seen the lives of people change a lot, and that is so beautiful. But I think what we do works well because we are a community. The people who run this, we really take care of each other. There's a lot of respect. There's a lot of care for each other, and there's also a lot of different characters. We all have our weaknesses and problems. And it's not so formalized, and sometimes we wish it was more organized, and we're trying to get there somehow. But it's really a space in a community in which everyone comes and brings an own personality, an own perspective. So the value is really, it sounds cheesy, but it's about friendship. What we build upon, and that's why I think it works pretty well. Then there's obviously very talented people who are incredibly inspiring. Cielo is one of the most inspiring persons I've ever met. Max is a genius. We worked together for so long. I cannot see him anymore. No, I'm joking. He's a close friend, but he can do things I could never do. And maybe I can do some stuff, some different stuff. And so it's really about complementing and naturally allowing for people to bring in their idea, their point of view, their talent. So it really happens quite naturally, the way we work. And there are persons, Cleda, who leads our kitchen processes. She's a wonderful community mother, but she had become super shy and almost didn't leave the house. Now she inspires so many women. She's such a leader. She's so strong. She's out there. We have another Roberto, who's a construction master. He's an incredibly skilled man. He can do anything with his hands. When we had a construction site, we had 6 German architects, and they couldn't do much. And Roberto could do it all, with one hand behind his back. And but also he was super shy in the beginning. He barely spoke a word, and now he's, he when we have a summer school and there's a group of 25 students, Roberto can stand in front of the class and tell him what's going on. That's really, really good input they get. So it's super beautiful to see how the people actually have a different life through that. And that is who run the project, and it's obviously the stairs. I mean, people who couldn't walk up there, they can walk up there every day. So that's beautiful to see. And then from the other side, who comes, I hope, but I do think that quite many people who have participated, let's say as a student, they have changed a little bit. They have added another layer to their vision on the profession they're learning. They have a new idea of how they could be. And everybody who goes to Moravia, and I mean, we're talking about our project. Moravia in itself is a universe, and the community is incredible. So you go there, and hopefully you can go there. You're super welcome. And it just makes something with you. It leaves a mark, and it's so I think that's a good value to.
I find it interesting how you talk about empowerment, because sometimes I have a slight issue with this word, but I think you frame it very well, because sometimes people use it as we went to this community and these people don't have power and we gave them power, but it's not that. It's more of these people have all the power and you in a way not not make them see that it's very powerful, but like in a way you empower them to be visible and to do the things and to live their lives and to
we listen.
dream.
It starts with that. We go and listen. We had a fun, like on the empowerment line of our work related to the unclear future in the territory. We managed to that a session was summoned at the city council, and they summoned it at Saturday 7 a.m.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
who would go on Saturday at 7 a.m.?
Yeah, the council would call, sign that he was there, and then go home.
Yeah,
that's the idea of summoning it Saturday 7 a.m. Well, they didn't count on Moravia because we came with 80 people from the neighborhood. None of the city councils could leave the session. You know, they had to sit there and they had to listen to us. They had to, when they said something that was like not well thought, they would have 80 people from the stands going, like giving them. You know, it's important. It's important to find a good way to hear without being like pointing the finger or being aggressive. And it's understandable. I mean, they've gone through incredible things we cannot even imagine, and not even us who have lived there for years. So yeah, again, we are. There are some of the greatest teachers that we have ever had in that.
I also find it very interesting how, I mean, you had done this promotional video, I guess, for the architecture and development, but also for the crowdfunding campaign, etc. And I was listening to it again actually this morning, and I put this in last minute because I realized how people kept talking about love.
Yeah.
So it was a lot about this is just some examples, but it was like falling in love with the neighborhood, or falling in love again with myself, or discovering new ways and falling in love with the community and about the creativity and the heart. So I found it very interesting how all the words that everyone was using was so much about this emotion that you wouldn't necessarily usually connect with architecture or with space or with what an architect does, right? But it's a little bit, we had this conversation with some colleagues that we had like a small like seminar the other day. And I think what we came out with is that in a way being vulnerable all together collectively is more powerful than one person having a lot of power or anything like that. And also this dreaming. But I found it very interesting that people see this as a place to dream, not only how it can be in the future, but also to dream what we can do and to talk about our dreams. I don't know. This is also starting to sound really cheesy, but I think these aspects of imagining and dreaming and finding community, they are things, because they sound cheesy, we don't often talk about them in a more serious way, or we don't include them as part of how we define our practice and our values. But I think they are equally important with someone being able to walk up the stairs, someone being able to have a dream for the future or love for their neighborhood is also very important. I don't know.
No, absolutely. The pictures, I mean, it's true, and you speak Spanish, so you understand why the word being used enamoraviarse. You know, so that makes the word falling in love with the word Moravia, which is very typical, and people. I just saw that this is what I feel. It's real. You can say it, and you saw Elsie, who was on the slide with the 6 photos in the middle at the bottom. She was the one who had the initial idea to build an open space that would combine aspects of nutrition, gardening, a space for encounter, learning, culture. We had that when she was here in Berlin in 2017. And she was by then already a grandmother, and she was also, when we built the stairs, she was there every morning. She was the first one to come there and the last one to go. And when we were hungry and almost falling asleep, Claire was cooking for us. And Juliana, also saw there is one of the most like brilliant people I know, and but combining understanding and feeling, like being like empathy. I think empathy is what many architects lack quite a lot.
Yes.
And that comes to what you said. We think we need to know it all. Who knows it all? Nobody knows it all. You cannot do good work if you think you do it all by yourself. I don't believe in that. And she's been an incredible source of inspiration, and also regarding like how can we as organizations help each other out, because she was running another NGO, Low Carbon City, for many years, and she helped us out, knowing so many things and people. And then she was part of she has a fellowship in the United States, Echoing Green, which is a social leadership program. And she motivated us to apply, and we didn't even make the second round, and we're like, forget it. And the next year she's like, you should apply again. We're like, no way, we're doing it. And she insisted, and in the end it saved us, because at that point we had been working with no money for half a year, and we didn't know how much longer we could continue with the work, and we went through, and that's been a super beautiful process, because one, at that point it allowed us economically to continue the work, but two, it inspired us that there are many people on a mission, doing beautiful work across the globe. Seeing Cielo in New York City, talking to some Ivy League professors and World Bank managers and stuff, and the people, they couldn't believe that the charm and the intelligence of this woman, and she was raised on that garbage. She's lived all that. She was raised as one of 10 children without a father, with that violence, with all that. And then you will meet her, and she's one of the most positive persons you can ever know. And we're sitting here in Europe being all fed up because, I don't know. I've eaten sushi Thursday, you know where I'm going. Like,
yeah.
Again, like, you cannot romanticize it, and we're very, very aware of many problems that the neighborhood has. But yeah, we definitely value a lot the knowledge, the skill, the passion, the warmth that there is. And culturally, it's super interesting. But as I mentioned, the place was built by refugees. And Colombia is a highly diverse country, not only as biodiversity, but also cultural. It's an incredible mix, which makes it so beautiful. Both of these kinds of diversity are threatened, which is why a concept as you have it here with the radical imagination is so important. But this diversity is super, super inspiring. And in a place like Moravia, you will find roots from the highest mountains to the desert to
everywhere,
the coastline, to rural traditions, and so much music. Like we have a project that inhabits our house that is a bujerenge project, and that's traditional music from rebellious Caribbean slaves, and the group that we have, they're all, they've all had to leave their villages because they weren't respected in their sexuality or their orientation or whatever. So we have this group of people who are incredible artists, bringing this whole heritage of culture, telling so many stories, and that I think is beautiful to allow for these stories to be heard, to pass this knowledge on.
Okay, I have one sort of last question that I ask everyone, because I don't always ask the same things to everyone, obviously, just kind of go with the flow, but this I like to ask to everyone. So it's, if you close your eyes and we are at some point in the future, I don't know how much in the future, you can decide 5, 10, 50 years, and everything that you
want to close my eyes?
No, you don't have to close, but you can imagine that, we're at some point in the future, and everything that you sort of are not dreaming for, but everything that you would like to change around you, it has changed somehow. Something magic happened and it has changed. and now you open your eyes. What does it look around you? What is the thing that changed?
Okay, but I'm sorry if I don't get the question. Am I looking at Moravia? Am I looking at...
It's up to you. It doesn't matter.
Am I looking at...
You can interpret it as however you want. It doesn't really matter. You might be looking at Moravia. You might be looking at, I don't know, Berlin, or you might be looking at the whole world, or you might just be looking at, I don't know, your taller.
Wow. That's very difficult.
Sorry.
No. It's good. The difficult questions are good. So, well, I will. It's really difficult because it's a super personal question also.
I mean, you can respond to any level or degree that you would like, but it might just be one thing or nothing, and maybe everything just looks the same.
No, I mean, I will, because this is why we come here together. I will definitely look at Medellin, and I will see the city a lot greener, because it's collapsing. Like it's too full. It's in a valley, so the pollution is incredible. But then you see colibri flying through Moravia. So I see it a lot greener, and it starts with Moravia, of course. I do see our house in full function, 4 stories, rooftop terrace. I see the park. I see the whole quebrada, the canal. So we're projecting a project on the whole canal, which is both includes urban interventions, but also like an educational process around the environment, like how to take care of urban biodiversity, how have the people understand that the garbage you throw in the canal here in the city somehow ends up in the sea. And so I definitely see that the people of Moravia still live in Moravia. I see that the foundation is flourishing, and that we have come to the point where we picture ourselves to be at some point, where we also go and work in other contexts, which we have done, but only a little bit, because commitment is important, long-term commitment. It's for us, deep roots are more important than being in many places. But we do want to at some point. So, and I see Cielo traveling the world already and inspiring others, and I hope that many of our community can do that. I hope that I hope to see more and more people from the community being teachers at some. But again, in teacher in the sense of understanding the student at least as important as the teacher, right? But continue to play and to be in touch. I really hope that Medellin can go in that way and be less polluted, less violent, more green, a more free place to live, because it's a super controversial place that is incredibly beautiful, but super hard and violent. And, so my biggest desires are, and they sound cliche, but it's that it can be a more peaceful society with more choices, with more people being heard in an equal manner. And I hope I can continue to travel and be a little bit part of it, because I'm already stepping away a little bit from it, like not personally, because I have a little daughter here in Berlin, and I don't live in Medellin anymore. And when you ask me where do I see myself in 10 years, well, I see myself by the side of my daughter, and hopefully she can travel the world with me.
Thank you so much. The Confronting Radical Imagination Conversation series is hosted, written, researched, and edited by Lara Sharf. The Conversation series is part of the Radical Spatial Futures project, funded by the ESRC, supervised by Professor Doina Petrescu and Dr. Tanzil Shafiq at the School of Architecture of the University of Sheffield. Special thanks to Albert Kreisel and Oasis Urbano for joining the conversation. Follow their work on their website, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook. To follow the RSF project, check radicalspatialfutures.com or at radicalspatialfutures on Instagram. Playing in the intro and outro is Fairy Tales by Daniel Zambo.